All right, Chris, we're back. But I think this is episode 42, by the way. I'm so freaking proud that we have kept our shit together for 42 episodes. And true to form, man, I don't know. I texted you. I know we went back and forth before today about this most recent. I don't know that it was an assassination attempt, but something at the golf course. I mean, shit just keeps happening, Chris. What is your take on you know on the last week since we were on here? What are the big developments? Is that the biggest one?
No, I don't think it is. And I'm trying to think how to say this so it sounds rational. A lot of times, the big events, what are seen as the big covered events in a especially in a presidential campaign, really don't resonate down because you're busy. You've got stuff, and you go, "Oh my God, he was assassination attempt. That's fucking horrible." I mean, that's what or damn it, they should have shot him, or whatever the fuck whatever you
Yeah,
happen to be
right.
thinking.
Pick your poison. Yeah, yeah.
But once you do that, it becomes, what am I going to have for dinner? Right?
Right.
Who's
Right.
picking up the kids? And
Uh-huh.
what happens then is that you will get more information um, from paid advertising. And
Hmm.
I think this is where the absolute tonnage of Harris's financial advantage over Trump, which I think we talked about 2 weeks ago,
Yeah.
really matters. I think the Trump targeting on stuff, as far as I can see, I professionally, I have a dashboard and I can see who's doing what where, all over the country. And I think Trump's targeting is more interesting, but it's clearly stretched thin. But Harris is just pounding away on stuff. And again, I think her spots are very good. I think some of them are what? I think her public performances are so. I mean, it's clearly she's been coached and prepped, which is it's not a horrible thing because everybody in this business is coached and prepped, and
Yeah.
um, everybody in every business is coached and prepped.
Right.
Um, you know,
I think it's actually an underappreciated skill, by the way, to be coached and prepped, but not come across as stilted.
yeah,
To
yeah,
to give a coached answer that feels organic in the moment. You know what I mean?
yeah, and it's transferable. The idea is transferable to, like, other businesses. I mean, Bryce Harper, what a natural hitter. Boy, the guy can hit. Like, how many hours and how many coaches
Right.
and how much detail,
Totally.
um, and so it's the same thing with a politician. I mean, Reagan, who was, the two best in my lifetime were Reagan and Obama. And Reagan was a professional actor and then a TV actor. And then on top of that, did basically the rubber chicken circuit for 20 years, or for 15 years for was it General Motors or General
Or
Electric?
GE. Yeah, yeah.
General Electric. And so you've got that skill over a lifetime. So of course you're fucking good.
Right.
And Obama was incredibly gifted, but he spoke in churches, and he was a public speaker, and you develop that skill. And even at the height of his Reaganism, in '84, the Reagan campaign, after a really bad first debate with Walter Mondale, the Reagan campaign brought in Roger Ailes
Hmm.
to coach Reagan. And actually, it's a very good story because it kind of, like, a lot of times if I'm brought in to do comms work or speech coaching or something like that, I would say probably a third of the time, you don't really do anything but give that person confidence. And basically, what had happened on the Reagan thing, the first debate, is that they beat the shit out of him in the debate prep. I mean, they
Hmm.
just destroyed him. And I've been in some debate preps where the person playing the opponent is way better
Right.
than the opponent was ever be. Because
Right.
we got some super smart partner in a law firm, um,
Right.
who does stand up comedy on the side, and he just fucking
Yeah.
destroys the guy. And you kind of got to go again.
Yeah.
But anyway, what Ale said, it was like he was like said, "That's great, Mr. President," and basically his advice was like, "That's great, be yourself." And a lot of times,
Huh.
I'll go into a thing, especially with in corporate, and these guys have just gotten the shit beat out of them in the prep, and usually my advice is like, "How long have you had this job? What did you do before? Do you think you know what you're doing? Okay, so you're good to get here, so just be that guy." And that's the end of my prep.
Right.
Here's the
Right.
invoice.
Sounds like a pretty easy payday, Chris.
Well,
I'm
you know,
just kidding.
I just gave away the keys to the kingdom. I
Yeah,
stretched
I
that
was
over.
gonna say
I
anybody
stretched that
listening
over.
who wants to become a consultant for helping a corporate guy get his mojo back. It's
Yeah, but most of it really is if you've been successful doing something, you know, keep doing it. I mean,
yeah,
some people are disasters, and little tricks and things that really you have to know from experience, but a lot of it is just pretty simple stuff. So,
right,
but but anyway, so like, and again, and Trump is immune to that because Trump is just going to do what he wants to do. Um,
right.
but
For
I
better
think
or
that
for worse, he's immune to it.
yeah, yeah, and
Well, let me ask you a question though about that
yeah,
immunity for a second. Do you think, to go back to last episode, to go back to the debate, I wonder though, it wasn't until he was already starting to get red in the face and frustrated with the debate that he dropped the eating the cats and the dogs.
yeah.
And I wonder if that is his version of what you're talking about. When he's shaken, his default is to outrageous comment.
Could be. Yeah.
Maybe
Yeah.
I
No,
don't know.
I mean, that's fair. That you kind of default to, I won't say who you are, but you default to a comfort zone.
Right.
There was they asked, similarly that they asked Harris. There was a question I just saw. She was at the Association of Black Journalists or
Yeah.
yesterday, and they asked her about what do you think about the assassination attempts? Do you feel safe? And it became, oh yeah, I feel safe. They do a great job, which is the right answer. And then she turned it into a LGBTQ question, and kind of she went into her kind of California
Talking
senator,
point. Talking point. Yeah.
California senator, and it was all kind of harm. Well, everybody has to feel safe in the LGBT community, and don't say gay in Florida. It was like all this kind of mishmash stuff, but you can just tell it was like, I didn't pay attention to the question, or I'm lost, or I don't know how to answer this. So let me go back into my safe place. Let me go.
Yeah.
Let me go back into my comfort zone. Um,
Right. Right.
and
Yeah, and I also I saw that, and she started by saying, she mentioned the immigrant
yeah,
community, and I think she even might have said the word Springfield. She said, "Do they feel safe?"
yeah,
And what I thought about it was like that wasn't the right time to make a dig. Do you know what I mean? Like
yeah,
the question didn't really set you up for that. You were set up for a single, not for a triple. You know what I mean? So
yeah.
don't
No,
try to
that's
extend.
really good.
Don't go for the extra bases.
And a lot of times, the greatest thing you can do if you're a candidate or corporate or you're doing whatever is shut the fuck up. Oh yeah, I feel
Right.
really safe. I think it's really good. They do a great job, but we have to be vigilant.
Exactly.
I
Exactly.
mean,
And we have to make it clear that we are competing for leadership of the country, and that we do that in debates. We do that by getting our message out. We don't do that through violence. It's a very simple
yeah,
question, really.
yeah. And again, it wasn't like a big thing she did bad, but I think to your point about Trump defaulting to, let me do the
Right.
outrage machine, or let me do, he could have just as easily done his Hannibal Lecter thing a bit again.
Right. Right. Right.
You know, uh,
So you bring up the NABJ. Before that, did you see her interview with the local Philly guy? She
yeah,
did a local
right,
new. You saw
right.
that one? I so what was your take on that one? That was far shorter. It was 11 minutes, but it was, she's doing more press now, I guess, right? So, what was your take on her performance in that?
Um, she was well. There were two performances. There was the it was my hometown, the biggest station in the market, WPVI TV in Philadelphia, Channel 6 Action News, and on their website they teased out a bite of her, and it was this kind of word salad, and
Mm,
it was like fuck, it was like bad Kamala. In the
hmm
actual interview, they edited that out, and or they edited a piece of it out, or they cut in B-roll on it. And, and
mm,
and from a journalistic standpoint, I mean, it wasn't a cardinal sin, but it was certainly a venal sin. But I thought she was good. I mean, because here's what I think she's doing. I think you look at her now at these things and you go, she could be president. She looks
she's
presidential.
normal. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, she kind of like goes goo goo sometimes, but
right,
but literally for 8 years, the bar is Biden and Trump not making sense in a sentence fucking
right,
70% of the time. And
right,
so, like, if she was coming after Obama or coming after Reagan or even coming after, if she was coming somewhere in there, um, fuck, you would go like, oh my God, get in that. But the bar has been lowered significantly.
yeah,
And I think that kind of benefits her. But like, you look at her, she looks presentable, she looks likable, she looks normal.
yeah,
And,
yeah.
and we'll see. I mean, so Quinnipiac had a survey out, had a survey with a bunch of states that show Harris up in Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and Michigan. And they also
hmm
show the Senate candidates up there. Forgetting for a minute, I don't think it's a great survey, um, but but let's believe part of it. And I don't think it's a great survey because they ask questions about who's better on immigration, Trump or Harris, and it's Trump by like 4 points in Michigan, and you go fucking no, you
Right,
know.
right,
Um,
right,
but that doesn't mean that it's still. I always say a single poll doesn't mean a lot. A series of polls actually means something. It means a direction. Um,
sure.
and so people get, it's really funny. You go on Twitter, it's like I refuse to say X, like I refuse to call the DC airport Reagan. It's National Airport. Fuck you.
Right,
I'm
right.
kind of like stuck like that. It's like, it's Sixth Avenue. It's not Avenue of the Americas in New York. No, fuck you. These are the hills I'm dying on. Um, but this kind of there's an entire Twitter industry about fighting about a single poll, and
Right,
and and the fight is always, did this were the results what I wanted it to be.
right,
And I think Nate Silver and Nate Cohen, I think the Nates have it correctly, is that you can argue with their model, and I have problems with some of them, but it's like,
sure.
but directionally they're pushing the thing in the right direction, and in terms of their modeling, they're asking the right questions, and so again, I kind of, if I'd say people don't, a single poll means nothing. Polls over a series of days or weeks, they do mean something because they're an indicator, and it's really
Right,
clear that Harris went up, she came back to earth, the debate pushed her up, and now she's riding the debate thing. And she got a little bump from the debate, not a great one, but she got one. But again, tonnage of TV matters.
mm,
Um, there is a Republican pollster named Patrick Ruffini, who is a good Twitter follow, and he did a thread this week about the Bush '04 campaign and the up and down nature of that. But he had an even better one, um, which he links to it, of the Bill Clinton campaign in '96. Now, I happen to do both the '04 Bush campaign, and I disagree a little bit with his analysis of it, but it'd be something you'd argue over a beer as opposed to like, oh my God, he's wrong. It's like, nah, that was kind of more this, and that was really important, shit like that. But the
Mm,
Dole thing was really important because it talks a lot about, in the Dole thing in particular, the Dole Clinton campaign, is it talks about the money advantage for Clinton, and that Clinton was on TV nonstop starting in 1995. He went on the spring of '95
mm,
and went off for Christmas and New Year's, but was on till Election Day in '96. And
yeah.
that tonnage over a period of time really makes a difference. And I think when you see Harris outspending Trump by, 4, 5, 6 to 1, that fucking matters. Especially because, again, I think that the TV coming out of the campaign has been very good. I think did I forward you the Latino spot?
No.
I will. So somebody sent it to me, and I thought it was the best spot of the cycle, presidential cycle so far. And
Huh.
it is. You look at it and you go, okay, that's a good spot. But it's a great spot because it's a Latino on air, uh, like radio podcaster guy, who I've vaguely heard of, but he's like the Larry, he's like Latino Larry King.
Okay.
He's not, he's not, and I say Larry King who's dead, but like Larry King was more of a niche thing. He wasn't like a Joe
Yeah.
Rogan who's kind of global, but he was
Right.
a guy. If you said it, you kind of go okay, and he just does this endorsement of Harris, and he checks all the boxes, and um, and the spot is all economic. It's about her economic stuff. And the feeling you get from it is that culturally it's right of center and
Mm.
economically it's left of center. And that's exactly where you need to be. And so, and again, it was one of those things that kind of really hit all the notes, and checked all the boxes. It was brilliant.
Was this a Spanish language spot, or was it just
In English.
a?
It was in
Oh,
English.
okay. Oh,
It was,
okay.
it,
Interesting.
it was clearly Spanish. It was clearly Latino driven, but what it really was working class.
Hmm. Yeah,
It
it's
was a
interesting that you say where she needs to be is right of center economically, or
yeah,
culturally, and left of center economically.
yeah,
Think about how drastic of a shift that is to
yeah,
a generation ago, where it was the exact opposite.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
uh, Let me ask you. Let me run this by you. I obviously she has a huge money advantage. I always felt like the strength for Trump was his ability to get earned publicity. His ability to, if he was doing a rally, everyone was covering it. If he was given some sort of speech or something in front of Mar-a-Lago, it was all covered. And what I think is also interesting now, and almost the inverse for Biden. Like, Biden got publicity because he was the president, but people kind of try to shy away from him. Maybe they were hiding
Mhm.
things, maybe they weren't. I think she's also benefited from the fact that now she's getting earned publicity. When she goes to do a rally, news is there showing all of it. They're actually showing everything. Same thing with Walls. He's in Georgia. I've seen a lot of earned publicity just from local news that they're then taking, cutting up, and sending as ads, or
Yeah,
sending as like Twitter or LinkedIn posts or whatever. So I think that benefit gap for Trump has closed, while her gap for money has expanded, and it's causing a real marketing advantage for her.
yeah, and that's a super great point, and it is something. A lot of times we'll talk about how there's nothing really new. That is something really new about taking stuff and repurposing it,
Yeah,
and taking actual news clips and repurposing it, and taking. I mean, she got caught earlier in the cycle about running articles with fake headlines.
yeah, yeah,
She was changing, and again, no, you should not do that. It's not a best practice. But the repurposing of that kind of stuff,
totally.
is new, and it is. And you kind of touched on something really interesting that I just kind of thought of, and let me workshop this with you. That, well, you do that now because the legal mechanisms and the ecosystems of distribution for stations and networks is so weak.
Mm,
And it used to be that if you took something on ABC News and you repurposed it with your disclaimer on a website, you would have 50 fucking lawyers up your ass and you'd be pulling it down in a couple hours. Um, that doesn't happen anymore. And everything, little clips and bites exist all over the place. And, it's like turning on, if you've lived in a terrible place and you turn on the light in the kitchen at 3 a.m. and the cockroaches run all over the place. This is what this is. That's what social media is. It's cockroaches running in the dark. Um,
sure.
but the other piece of that is that in 2016, and if somebody wants to Google um, Trump free media versus paid media, New York
Mm,
Times, Trump rose to power that he got roughly in the Republican primary, just the Republican primary, not the general election, $2 billion or like $1.9 billion of free media.
wow.
And it wasn't on Fox, it was on fucking CNN and MSNBC and CNBC and Morning Joe and all that bullshit. And that's kind of how he rose to power. His ability, as you said, his ability to do free media and control everything
Yeah.
and control message. And I mean, famously, on the night of Ted Cruz wins the Iowa caucuses and CNN does not cover his speech, they cover Trump's plane sitting on the tarmac.
Right.
Um, you
Right.
know, and actually, people forget that Fox News was the really wanted Cruz, and they really pushed him. But what's happened is the media ecosystem has been balkanized and shattered in so many places. It's really difficult to, Trump does Fox News for, all their million viewers. It's
Yeah.
just like, who fucking cares?
Yeah, I think even in this election cycle, if you look at the Republican primaries, Trump wasn't even running in the primaries really. They
Yeah.
would have debates. He wouldn't be on the stage, but he was sucking all of the oxygen out of the room through earned media, like all this earned publicity. And I think the most stunning change isn't how much money Kamala's raised, is that she's actually out competing him now
Yeah.
for that earned publicity, which means her money now is a force multiplier, not making up a difference.
Yeah. And
Uh,
there was also something that it's a lot easier to get your person on a news show or a softball interview if you bought TV time.
right,
And locally, if you say,
right,
hey, we'd like to do an interview, can we do a stand up there? And they're like, well, we don't think it's really news. And we say, hey, motherfucker, we just dropped $5 million on your station.
right,
And they're like, well,
right.
we'll see what we can do. I mean, and again, that's another blurring of a line that
Yeah.
didn't used to happen back, when I started out, but that's the world we live in. And it's, and again, saying, oh my God, that's awful, that's unfair, and it's degrading. And yes to all those things, but that is the world we live in if you want to work in political campaigns.
I also think, I mean, this is not me getting on a soapbox, but I
Mhm.
also think that in a way, Trump has pulled the tail of the lion in the sense that I think Kamala's campaign has shown a willingness to play in a way that Biden's never did and probably never would have.
Mhm.
I also think that AOC is of the same ilk where she's like, this none of this like when they go low we go high shit, the
Yeah.
Michelle Obama stuff, it's
Right.
not that anymore.
Right.
And I think it's making things very interesting at the campaign level now. You're talking about blurring of lines. I don't know how blurred those things can get before there's no more line.
And I think we're kind of there. I think we are in that place. But
Yeah.
again, but in terms of engagement and shooting them back, I mean the Kevin Costner Sean Connery movie The Untouchables, which is making
Yeah.
its which is showing up on HBO a lot this month for whatever reason, or maybe it's Showtime, but showing up on one of the cable premiums a lot this month. But there's the great Sean Connery thing. We used to joke it's Sean Connery campaign advice. People used to use the clip in campaign schools. It's like, if they bring a knife, you bring a gun. They bring a gun, you bring a cannon. They put one of yours in the hospital, you put one of theirs in the morgue,
Hmm.
right? Um, you know, if he calls you a communist, call him a child molester. I mean, that's kind of that's kind of how the game works. And yes, and if you were appalled by it, um, go get a job in academia, because professional politics is not for you.
Yeah, and also, it's so funny. What that makes me think of is and you would tell me if this is actually real or not. But what my understanding is that it might have been LBJ. He was running for Congress, and he said, "I want you to say that this guy's a pig fucker." And
Yeah,
they said, "Nobody's ever going to believe he's a pig fucker." And he said, "No, but I want to hear him deny
yeah,
it."
it's LBJ. Yeah, it's a great LBJ story. Yeah,
Yeah, but
and
it's
again,
to the point.
yeah, I mean, and again, the simpler version of it is, to have your opponent deny that he's a crook. Um,
Yeah,
you know, and
yeah.
and again, but like, all these are kind of a, gamesmanship. The
Mhm.
other piece of this is that you it doesn't particularly benefit you to play defense anymore, because the news cycle is so short. I
Totally.
mean, if you want to explain the four-part nuance thing about what I really meant,
Right.
um, no, it's he fucks pigs. Did I say
Exactly
pig?
right.
No, I was wrong. It was goats. He fucks goats, right? I
Right.
didn't mean goats.
Right.
I meant he fucks llamas. I mean,
Yeah.
and that's kind of where. And again, I don't think it's great for democracy. I don't think it's great for the country. But that is kind of what moves now. And
Yeah.
it's like literally the modern NFL. It's all offense.
Yeah.
Good luck anybody making a stop. Um,
Right. So you raised some interesting things. The so if this is the world that we exist in, there are a
mhm.
couple of stories that have happened recently. This might be when we say nothing matters anymore. It is because there is no defense, right? So you just
Right,
keep going ahead. It's
right.
almost like the news media. News is a very hard word to even use, but their goal is to be the first to the story, get it on the front page, not even the front page, but get it on their Twitter, blast it everywhere, and then when it is inevitably partially wrong or wrong, the retraction is like in the subtext later on. So what was it, yesterday or the day before, Republicans killed the IVF, the right to IVF bill in the Senate, completely contrary to
Let me speak to
what
more.
Donald Trump and they've been running on, which is no, the government's going to pay for it, or we're going to force insurance companies to pay for it. Do you think that will have any impact? Do you think that provides any attacks that will help the vulnerable Democratic incumbent senators?
I Yes, I think it helps them. I think part of the problem is that it was such a convoluted bill. There was the bill and the do IVF, which I think everybody voted for, and then there was
Mhm.
the we will deny money to the states if they block IVF, but we're not going to force them to pay for IVF. I think that was the second bill, and that was the one all the
Mhm.
Republicans voted against. That we're not going to require states to pay for IVF, but we'll block Medicare money. And so it that's my understanding of that bill. And you know, anytime you're playing, so it helps Democrats, it helps incumbents. Um, you know, because anytime you are playing on somebody else's turf, it is to your benefit. Um,
Right.
you know,
And to the point that you just made a minute ago, nobody cares about the detail. It's the
right,
headline, right? So the
right,
headline is Republicans block IVF bill, right? Right to
yeah,
IVF bill.
yeah, and anybody letting that. So I am not a legislator. I've never done a legislative strategy in my life, but I've done a bunch of campaigns where you say, of course you fucking vote for it. You know,
Right.
you're 6 weeks from a fucking election. Vote for it.
Right.
You can change it later. I mean,
Totally.
you know, uh, it's like people. It's like there was a very famous story where pollster Arthur Finkelstein was trying to convince um, Jesse Helms to vote for the Martin Luther King holiday
Hmm.
because it would have helped him politically. And at the end of the day, Helms voted against it because he said King was a communist. And to which Finkelstein said, "You got to be pretty fucking hardcore not to give a working man a free day off." Which is kind of like the consultant answer. The merits of a Martin Luther King holiday or paid holiday. Vote for it. I mean, you're giving somebody a guy off. You're giving some
Right.
dude. You're giving, and so like give people the day off in
To-
an election year, right? I mean, it's
totally.
not like America Vespucci Day. Fuck yeah, man, vote for it. Um, I mean, because it's a day off, and so they should have voted for it. And
so so that happened in the Senate. At the same time, there are, I think, now 13 days left until the deadline for the funding bill, the continuing
Mhm.
resolution in the House, trying to attach the SAVE Act to it. Is it the same advice to the House Republicans then?
Yes,
Don't, I
yes.
mean, Mitch McConnell came right out and said not passing the bill and a government shutdown is a losing strategy, basically,
Yeah,
is what he
yeah.
said.
You pass it. I mean,
Pass it. Pass
you
it
know,
clean, right?
yeah, pass it. Like pass it. Take it off the headline. I mean, the only way you would not want to pay now, if you're a Democrat, you want it to fail,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right? So if you're a Democrat, you really want to be against the government. You want to be. You're actually, if you're a Democrat, you're really for the government shutdown. If you're a Republican, you should be against the government shutdown. Um,
Right.
because
Which is the truth, probably, right? But
yeah,
they have to posture in the opposite direction for certain political reasons as well. It's a very interesting bifurcation of their political reality and their political posturing.
right. And while I don't want to say people in politics are unethical,
Far be
politics.
it for you to say that.
Sorry, but parties and politics are about power, and they're about getting
Yeah.
elected. That is first and foremost. I mean, you can look at the progress of the country since not these fucking stupid trad people who want to go back to making their own fucking clothes and butter. But if you look at the progress of this country since the end of World War II, it's fucking remarkable. It's remarkable.
Mm.
And I had a friend of mine who I worked with, and he was from India, and he wound up working for Chrysler, maybe Chevrolet, I forget that.
Mm-hmm.
But his famous line to me, he said, "I want to come to a country where the poor people are fat." Um, you know, um,
For sure.
I mean, I'm not making fun of obesity and malnutrition. I get all that shit, but I mean,
No,
but
but it's true. Yeah, yeah, you get it.
so
Yeah,
things
yeah.
are so. So I don't want to say the politicians only for themselves because stuff does get done and things do get better, and it is
Sure.
making sausages, and you take a step forward, you take a step back, and But having said that, if I can do something 6 weeks out to help my party or help my team win an election, fuck yeah, I'm going to do it because I've
Yeah,
got 2 years after that to fix it or rescind it and that shit happens all the time. I mean,
absolutely.
but that's
So,
kind of
so
yeah.
let me ask you a question. What, one more big piece of news out of the Congress yesterday. Did you see Senator John Kennedy in the in the hearing? I want to say that the title of the hearing was like um, non-hate, or it was something.
Yeah.
It was basically non-racial or ethnic hate,
Yeah.
right? Did you see what he said to the executive director of the
It
American
went, it went
Arab
past me.
American Institute?
No. What did he say?
So he asks her, "Do you support Hamas?" She's
Right.
offended. She
Right.
said, but she says no, and I counted at least 5 times she said no.
Right.
And he said, but you bashed us for cutting funding to UNRWA,
Right.
UN aid, and she said, and he said, so you support UNRWA. You also support Hezbollah, don't you? And she's like offended, and she's working in there. I can't believe you would ask me that. And he's like, you won't say you don't support. Anyway, eventually he says, you should cover your head with a plastic bag or something like that.
Wow.
Yeah. So, A, he's not my favorite person to begin with.
Right.
But B, the audience in the chamber, it was even people who liked him, who even because it was prior to him talking to her, he's speaking to a rabbi about and he says, isn't it true that the policies of Harvard are diversity, equity, inclusion, and anti-Semitism? They
Mhm.
allow all of it or whatever. And he's making a point, which
Yeah.
maybe is a justified point, that they are allowing anti-Semitic hate speech. But then people that were on his side, I have to presume that when he said that, even they were aghast at the comment. Politically, have we gotten to the point where, like you said, there is no defense, there is no bad news, there's only good as long as you keep moving forward? Almost if you keep doubling down sometimes as well. Do you think that gets too far politically? Not morally, but politically, where you can lose your supporters by going too far?
Yeah, you can.
Have we seen it yet? Have
No.
we seen it yet?
No. Well, actually, yeah, we have seen it. We saw it in 2016 and 2018, where
Okay.
Republicans basically lost, white suburbs, white college educated upscale suburbs, and either they became Democrats or they became independents. And you also saw it with traditional working class, solid Democrats who've become Republicans. And so you have seen that rhetoric push both sides out in interesting ways. And again, if you had come to me in 2006 and said, Donald Trump is going to be the Republican candidate for president is going to be courting rappers for president, and the
Right.
Democrat is going to be endorsed by Dick Cheney and a torture memo guy,
Right.
you would say it's
Right.
time to check into rehab. But but yeah, you can go too far. I mean, I didn't see the Kennedy thing. I mean, he tends to be bombastic and he tends to be
Yeah.
and kind of funny, I think, a lot of times. And I also
Right.
put out, like, he does that foghorn leghorn, I'm an old country lawyer. He's from a fucking Ivy. I forget, is he Penn
Yeah.
and Harvard or Yale and Harvard or Yale and Brown? Or I mean, he's a
Yeah.
fucking Ivy League guy. I mean, he's
And he
about
was a Democrat with a very different accent before.
yeah, yeah. I mean,
People forget that. Like, just go on YouTube and type in John Kennedy Democrat. You'll see all kinds of video where he doesn't sound like he sounds now,
yeah,
and he was a Democrat.
yeah. And it's I do think overall congressional hearings have been turned to shit, because
Yeah.
because in my day, frankly, there was certainly theatrics, but it was frowned upon, and it was kind of considered in bad taste. But what's happened is that nobody has policed their side, and they see the advantage for being bombastic and asking 20 rapid fire yes or no questions that you can't really answer.
Yeah.
Oh, you can't answer them? Why can't you answer them? It's a simple question. I mean, it's like that kind of
Yeah.
shit. And you kind of go, and
Yeah.
I'm longing for the day where somebody just goes, you know what, Congressman, you know what, Senator, go fuck yourself. And you would be held in contempt, and but that will happen sooner or later. And
And honestly, at its most basic, the most annoying thing is that most of their time isn't even questions, it's statements now.
Yeah.
It's not, they're not trying to figure anything. I don't even know why there's a witness. You could remove the witness and just talk to the chair. The cameras don't care.
Yeah, and I think the exception to that was the self-immolation of the three university
Oh
professors.
yeah.
And,
Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
I don't even, I guess it was Elise Stefanik,
Yeah, she really nailed him.
and they did it to themselves because, like,
Mhm.
I mean, that was actually pretty good questioning. I mean, she was very, she was partisan and aggressive, but I didn't cross the line. But they destroyed themselves.
Yeah.
And I also think that, unlike most of these hearings, we did learn something informational about that
Yeah.
the presidents of these colleges were operating under a policy that was fucking insane.
Right.
And it was, when you hear it said, you most people, like myself included, were like, well, that's probably not what they really meant, right? And you kind of listen to it and you go, oh, that's right. And what's
Yeah.
interesting is all three of those universities have either dumped those university presidents, or they have done big revisions in the student codes. Or, I
Yeah.
think all of them said, oh, we're not going to take positions on anything anymore. Um, but
Well,
it's funny.
let's stick with Congress for a little bit
Yeah.
longer. I want to ask you about two specific races. The first, since we started by talking about the Senate, I saw today that a new Hill Emerson College poll came out for the Maryland race. Larry Hogan, super popular
Mhm.
Maryland governor, and Angela Alsobrooks, who was, I think, the PG County, Prince
Yeah.
George's County executive. Um, it looks like he's closed the polling gap by 6 points. So now it is a 9 point gap. No, he's closed it by 9 points. It's a 6 point gap now. And some people, in what I read, people don't trust one-off polls, like you said.
Mhm.
Some people are saying that other polls are saying it's much closer. It's actually a dead heat. What do you think, or maybe what do you know in the insider information for anybody who's thinking about drafting, or taking the over or under on Hogan or also Brooks? I think it's always going to be a toss up between those two in that state with him. I just think that's the way it's going to be. But what do you know? Anything?
Yeah. Well, so, since everything is always about me, so I actually, I did his first race in 2014.
Oh,
I He was obviously a very good candidate. He was running against a kind of dumb as a cinder block lieutenant governor. And Martin O'Malley was the governor, and he was very unpopular. But Hogan was a very good candidate, raised no money. Um, and the Republican Governors Association did a poll around this time. Um, and everybody went, holy shit, this guy can win this. And so I produced a bunch of spots. And literally, the Republican Governors Association spent all the money for the Republican for Hogan in that race, and he won. He won in an upset, and he's extraordinarily popular and blew out whoever he ran against in the reelect. Um,
hmm.
Here's kind of what the race is, and I think Hogan's run a really smart race, and she's run a really smart race,
Yeah.
and she's outspending him a bit. If Hogan was getting the money for that race that, like, say, they're spending on McCormick or in Montana, he would win. But
Mm.
so he's saying, let's change politics. Let's and me is, I'm the not Trump guy. I'm the anti-Trump guy. I am the nonpartisan governor, and I did a really good job, and you like me, and I can bring that to the Senate, which is a pretty compelling argument. Her argument is much simpler. Hogan will be the 51st vote for a Republican Senate.
Right.
And, you know, so does sheer partisanship, which is what her campaign is, and again, I think it's smart, does sheer partisanship beat independence? So do
Right.
you, and you say you want independent, you want people to work together, and that's clearly a Hogan vote, but do you hate Republicans more? Do you hate Trump and Republicans more than you want people to get together?
Yeah, agreed. And it is a bit hypocritical in a way. Although I do see the argument about it because I would imagine that at least Clarence Thomas's seat could become available in the next 4 years. And it matters. The Senate's going to matter, right? So if you want to balance a bit more,
Hmm.
the now granted, if Kamala's president, Clarence, nobody's going to leave unless they die. But
Right.
Clarence Thomas is older, right? And he's also a black man, and that just demographically leads to higher probability that something could happen to his health, right? So certainly he is someone that I think there could be a seat coming available. I don't think he would give it up, obviously, if Kamala was president. Um, so I think that argument, I haven't heard much of the Supreme Court argument in some of these, and I think that would resonate much stronger. And I'm interested. I didn't know that she was using that. I think that's a smart way to play it.
Yeah. Yeah. And you could probably get, what's her name is also probably, they talk about her being up, um, Supreme Court.
You're talking about yes, but the Obama appointee, right? Not the liberal, right?
No, she's Latino. She was the first, Sotomayor.
Yeah,
Sotomayor. It's also
Sonia Sotomayor. Yeah, that was Obama, right?
yeah.
Her and Elena Kagan were Obama. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And so, that comes up. Having said that, I mean, obviously I'm a Republican consultant, and Hogan is the kind of guy that used to be a Republican, and he used to represent the Republican Party in that part of the United States.
Yeah.
And he's an extraordinary guy who would be a much greater asset to the U.S. Senate than she would. And
Hmm.
there's nothing wrong with her, but she is your generic bump on a log Democrat who's going to vote, like who's going to be there for 20 years, and you're never going to hear her name.
Right. That makes
And
sense.
while he could be an important national player, and more importantly, I think he could help change the culture of Washington. And
Interesting. Okay.
so is the race culture change versus 51st vote?
Mm.
That's
I
really
also
interesting.
saw. I didn't. Yeah, and I think it actually is these kinds of races are reflections of what we say we want and what we really want are very
Yeah,
different things. Um,
right.
it's interesting. I also say I wasn't going to necessarily bring this up, but you kind of alluded to it. I saw that the Democratic Senate committee they are not spending more money in Texas on Colin Allred and in Florida on the three name woman
Yeah.
running against Rick Scott. Or they not right now. They've not outlaid any money. It made me think of what you said about how it's smart for Colin Allred to kind of fly under the radar. So
Mhm.
maybe that helps him. Also, to go back to the IVF vote, Ted Cruz voted against the IVF thing.
Mhm.
So see about that. Um, Okay, so the other race I wanted to ask you about, which is I read a pretty interesting in-depth thing about it, and we had it in our very first ever fantasy elect contest, was California's 13th, John Duarte and Adam Gray, which was
I can't talk about that. I'm doing it.
oh shit. All right, well.
I'm working on it.
Okay, all right,
So
cool,
we can't talk
interesting.
about it. But actually, let's talk
Well,
about we can.
you can talk about the 2022 version, right?
No,
Where
I can't talk about that
Duarte
either.
won. Ah,
I
shit.
can't talk about that either.
All right. Well, for anybody who doesn't know, Duarte won by 564 votes, four
Yeah.
tenths of a percentage point.
The
Um,
But by the way, here's what I think is an interesting race. But Florida, the woman in Florida had no shot ever to win, and
yeah,
anything that if you gave her money or anybody gave her money is just like throw it out of a fucking helicopter. Um,
right.
Allred's a little different, but again, I think that I think that is not. It's an interesting play. Montana, apparently, Tester is cooked, and
Yeah, looks like.
I would have bet money um, that he would survive,
Yeah.
and apparently not, because he is not a great candidate. He's an okay candidate. He's not a great candidate. Um, but Tester, there used to be a negative slogan we used to tag on spots, and we used to say "too liberal for too long." And he's been there for 18 years, and I think there was enough of a vote history now that there was a preponderance of evidence against him and frankly, being there for 18 fucking years is a long time.
Yeah, I don't know. Honestly, I don't know his voting record. He's never been my senator, and I haven't looked into it. I do think, I know you said before Montana is quite more purple than people
Yeah,
realize. It's so hard to see that at the moment. I think I told you at the Republican convention, even the guy from Montana, he said the party there didn't even want Sheehy, right? And
right.
it's funny, I saw a couple of interviews with some Montana, I want to say it was at some sort of campaign event. It could have been all Sheehy stuff. It could have been all Tester doing this, but they were talking to regular Montanans, uh,
Montanans.
Montananites. I don't know. And it sounded to me like he was a bit of a carpetbagger. He's got
Yeah.
money. I guess and actually, when they said this, I didn't go back and look, but I thought I remembered the story. Like, he accidentally shot himself and said that it happened in Afghanistan or something. Do you remember this? I remember it.
It was one of these convoluted stories that I always discounted it because it never became anything.
Yeah. So
And
I
again,
don't
I
know.
don't know
Yeah,
the answer.
exactly.
I don't know the answer to it. But again, it's I have done getting that fourth term as a U.S. senator is really fucking
Mhm.
hard,
Is it? Yeah.
because you've been there, and also that the people that first elected you when you first ran, chances are they're dead,
Right, right, right.
because it's a quarter of a century later. Um,
It's a good point. I mean, it is a
no, not a
long
quarter of a
time.
century.
Tester had a good run.
It's 20 years, and again, you know, and he could still pull it out. But there's also, that was a race that Republicans said they weren't going to lose, and I think they're going to wind up spending more money in Montana than they will in Florida or Maryland or
Hmm.
Pennsylvania
Hmm.
or Wisconsin or
Yeah,
Michigan,
yeah,
because that was a seat that they thought they could take.
right.
And it looks like the Republican Senate is not going to have a great year, and so they certainly need a flag they need a, I don't want to say a
Yeah,
scalpel on the wall being Montana, but they need a trophy, and that'll be the trophy.
sure. Yeah, but it could end up being a Pyrrhic victory if Tester can force them to spend more money,
Yeah,
and then they don't have that money somewhere else. Um, so where would that leave that? Would that leave a tied Senate and still still a vice president tiebreaker? No, they would.
no,
The Democrats would have to pick up one seat in order
one
to keep
more.
it a tie, right?
You have to pick up something else, and you can't lose Hogan. You can't lose Pennsylvania. Um,
Right. Right.
and they're
I
all,
think all the other incumbents are going to survive. Personally, it looks to me.
yeah.
It looks to me like they're going to survive. Maybe
I
Sherrod
agree.
Brown is the next one on the chopping block in my book, but
Marina's a weak
all right.
candidate. Yeah,
Okay, so let's round this out. Oh, I wanted to say one thing because we've talked about Andy Bashir for a while now.
yeah,
Did you see that he just passed a ban on like child or adolescent conversion therapy?
yeah.
I saw that and I was like, is that an issue in Kentucky? Like, maybe it is, or is he trying to up his bona fides for 2028? Like, why do you think that was the thing that's getting press right now?
I saw it as a bona fides,
Yeah, yeah,
and it's like, I mean, it's not a to me, it's a bona fides, but it feels like a 2016 bona fides. I mean, it's
Mm,
not, it's not really edgy anymore.
yeah,
Um, you know,
totally agree. Totally
um,
agree.
so
Um,
I understand we get letters.
yeah, so I wanted to I have answered some comments on our channel. I think it would be cool if at some point you jump in and answer some too. And there's so in the we did an episode where we talked about the Russian influence at Tenet Media,
Hmm.
and JWB 4925, not at all a Russian bot, I'm sure, wrote, "Now do Biden's and Ukraine China." I didn't actually know 100% what that meant. Um, YouTube 2021 FM wrote back to that guy, "There aren't any, but keep crying, buddy." And then he wrote, "Hail to the permanent political class." I don't know. So I wrote back, "Have there been charges regarding Biden and Ukraine or China?" And I also wrote, "I also don't remember us like tying Trump to the Russian influence tenant media thing. Like, we very specifically, we didn't talk about Trump in that. We just said that I think we offered our
Yeah, our
services to
service,
Russian
right?
propaganda first." Um, Let me ask you a question. We've never talked about this on here, I don't think, but I certainly know that I could be living in a bubble. I have seen for at least a year Fox News and I think it was Jim Jordan's and the potential impeachment committees.
Hmm.
They were investigating Biden. Is there something that I'm unaware of that ties Biden to Ukraine and China? Ties his maybe financial interests, I guess, is what that comment was
There,
alluding to.
so again, not to go too far down the wormhole, but um, Hunter Biden is always the thing. I mean, both Gazprom, Russian gas services, and people in the businesses in the Ukraine,
Hmm.
and also China, paid the Biden lobbying firm millions of dollars uh,
Hmm.
for, I don't know. It's like, I mean, maybe got a driving interest in learning how to impregnate strippers and smoke crack. But uh, so but
His
basically,
course is now for sale on Udemy.
yeah, right. Like a master class. I would find. By the way, if that was a master class, him talking about like dating strippers and not getting caught smoking crack, and it was 6 episodes of
Right.
master class, I would definitely fucking watch that.
Right. But not dating your dead brother's ex.
Yeah, but
Widow.
him all strung out, like doing that. I mean, that would be riveting. Um, so
Yeah.
no, and kind of out of the Biden laptop and some captured screen caps on stuff. You know, Biden said I had nothing to do with it, but we know he met with. There's a lot of tangential
Hmm.
stuff to it that, like, he said he didn't meet with anybody. Yeah, we know he did. They scrubbed VP log books and Hunter saying there's 10% for the big guy, and there's all that kind of stuff.
Huh.
But again, it's a pretty easy thing is that you audit tax returns and you do an FBI thing, and it's either there or it's not. And so a lot of stuff I tend not to think it's there. And again,
Yeah.
I get he's a sitting president, but if there was something really there, then you have the IRS or you have the FBI, or you have the Treasury Department. Like, there are records of wires. There are
Right.
records, there are financial transactions that are pretty easily traceable. And
Right.
so I tend to think there's nothing there because it's too easy to
All right.
find.
So one last comment. I'm going to let
Yeah.
you comment to this guy. His name is T Woking
Okay.
10 or Twoking 10. I don't actually know. So he commented to our last episode, which was about the debate, and he wrote, "I thought he was blowing it on the abortion discussion," referring to Trump.
Hmm.
"Kamala clearly wants to keep it a national issue. It's in her ads. Trump will sign a national abortion ban. this is where Trump messed up. What he should have done in the debate was something like, the courts just ruled it's a states' rights issue. I don't know how you have a national ban now, even if I wanted it, and I don't. Instead, Trump started getting into all kinds of discussion about gestation limits, et cetera. Totally not necessary. He should have just said, Roe was overturned. I'm running for president, not governor. Call your state representative. By getting into specifics on gestation limits, he was allowing Harris to make it a national issue again, which is clearly what she wants. When Trump went down that rabbit hole, I was like, what are you doing, man? Don't argue with Kamala on abortion. Just leave it alone. You agree or disagree?
I agree. I think that is a very astute comment. That, I wouldn't be flippant and say, it's a state problem. I think it's that, look, the courts overturned it and everybody knew it was going to get overturned. And, I am pro-choice and I will not sign an abortion ban. I mean, I did that in what, 12 seconds. And that's the answer. It's not kind of,
Yeah.
and again, because Trump's answer was a pro-life answer. It was not a pro-choice answer. If you are pro-choice, you say, I'm pro-choice.
Right.
And it's between the mother and her doctor. And,
Right.
It's a 15-word answer. If you are pro-life, you say, well, as a rule of thumb, when somebody talks about details, it means they are pro-life. When somebody talks about philosophy, it means they are pro-choice. And so Trump gave we're all coded because we've heard this a million times. And, Trump gave the pro-life answer. And by the way, trying to convince campaigns of that, to when you give the detailed answer, it means you're pro-life. No, because people want to know. I said, no, nobody wants to fucking know. They want to know, are you pro-life or you're pro-choice? And you go, I'm pro-choice. I think it should be between families and doctors.
Right. I think I told you I was listening to the audiobook of When the Clock Broke, which I highly recommend. Maybe give it a listen or read. They referred to the Casey Supreme Court decision that you had talked about a week or two before. Yeah. All right. Last note. I just want to let everybody know, including you, if you're at all interested, today's National Cheeseburger Day. So there's some places that are doing giveaways on cheeseburgers, Chris.
Yeah, and also I want to do a shout out to one of our listeners, Jay Bottleson, who was Commander U.S. Navy, and he told me how much he likes the podcast. So thank you, Jay, for listening.
Nice. When he retires, we'll have to have him on. Then he can give us his opinions.
Yeah.
All right. Awesome. Thank you, Jay Bottleson. Thank you, everybody. And Chris, I'll see you next week.
Sounds good, brother. Bye.
Bye. All right, there you have it. Another episode in the books. Listen, it was a lot of fun. I was really, we had a great time talking about your comments. We love those. We love your comments. Even if you dig into us, listen, we're fair game as well. So please leave your comment, sign up, do that, subscribe and like. Please share. And we'll see you next week. And likely there will be a lot of news to cover then as well. In between, we do have 3 contests up now at Fantasy Elect that you can win some money and some pretty interesting contests right now. So we'll talk to you soon.